My name is Ulrikke, and I'm a tomboy. I'm also an actress, author, a TV host, and a pretty angry feminist. And there is a general misconception that all feminists are women who hate men. But let's debunk that already. I don't hate men. I sleep with men. I crave their attention, and actually my father is one. I really like men. What I do hate, and the reason that I'm so angry, are the expectations to masculinity and femininity, gender stereotyping, real men, and good girls. My whole childhood, I was told that I acted like a boy. In elementary school, I played soccer and basketball with the boys. I tackled and was aggressive. I was actually denied playing soccer in recess with the boys because the teachers meant I was too aggressive. When I started high school, I was bullied for having horse legs. The bullies told me that my big thighs made me look like a man. And I also had a pretty good friend that didn't conform to the traditional feminine fashion. She loved experimenting with clothes, had short hair, and therefore, the bullies assumed she was a lesbian. You've probably experienced something similar, gender or sexual orientation being used as an insult. Boys being called gay if they did ballet or expressed emotions, or tall girls being teased for their height. The expectations to how girls should act eventually got to me. I was ashamed for being a tomboy. I felt different and abnormal. Being bullied for my thighs had a pretty bad impact on my self-esteem. I was always used to have an advantage in sports with my strong legs, but the bullies told me the opposite. They said that my big thighs was too big. They were repulsive, too masculine, and too muscular. So I decided to lose weight. I thought that maybe if my thunder thighs would disappear, hopefully the comments about them would too. If I made myself smaller, maybe the boys wouldn't be bothered with me anymore. After 2 months of starving myself, I had lost a pretty severe amount of weight. And when I reflect back on why I developed an eating disorder, I see it as an attempt to fit inside the idea of femininity. Together with losing weight, I changed my style. I wore skirts, dresses, had long hair, and I even faked my voice lighter. I reduced myself to the pretty little girl I thought I was supposed to be. The traditional idea of femininity and masculinity has been incorporated in our culture throughout history. Typical feminine traits are gentleness, sensitivity, empathy, compassion, tolerance, and nurturance. Femininity is often associated with typical beauty and appearance, a common view that is pushed through mainstream media, popular culture, and pornography. Women were, for example, not allowed to run marathons in America until 1972 because it was not considered suited for a woman to sweat or be competitive. Typical masculine traits include strength, courage, independence, leadership, and assertiveness. We even have a word for extreme masculinity, macho. A machismo is a form of masculinity that emphasizes power, and it is often associated with a disregard for consequences and responsibilities. Now, gender is both made up of socially defined and biologically created factors. But I'll be blunt and say that a disregard for consequences and responsibilities isn't gendered. It is just stupid. Gender is a defining part of our identity, and I believe it being reduced to binary spectrum has a negative impact on our mental health. One of the first things we notice about another person is their gender. Before we know their name, we already have an assumption of which gender the person in front of us are, and we treat them differently based on that gender. Gender patterns can be tracked to as early on as in kindergarten. Research found that we praise girls for their clothes, hairstyles, appearance, caring nature, and empathic behavior, while boys are condemned for their physical size and strength. Boys are generally given more attention and space to express themselves than girls. We expect boys to be active, physical, and assertive, while for girls, those boundaries can be really difficult to push. We train boys from an early age to take active decisions, while the opposite applies to girls. Gender stereotyping is consistent through all ages. We expect different things from men and women. And historically, the fight for gender equality has emphasized lifting women up in society. Women have been discriminated and oppressed, and their voice in society was, and still are in some countries, equivalent to a child's. No right to vote, no right to private economy, and no right to make decisions regarding their own bodies. It is important to acknowledge that in order to achieve gender equality, we have to liberate women. But we never really talked about liberating men. Maybe because they already have all the external rights to participate in society. The liberation of men is about freeing them from the masculine standards. Men displaying feminine traits are often seen as weak and incompetent, and we condition boys from an early age to not express emotions, because to express emotions is to be weak and vulnerable. This ideal of masculinity may be the reason why men are more likely to underreport symptoms of depression. Suicide and depression are ranked as one of the leading causes of death among men, and yet they are still far less likely to seek mental health treatment. Suicide among men are 4 times higher than among women. A study by the National Institute of Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism puts the annual number of men dying due to alcohol-related causes to 62,000 compared to 26,000 women. Men are 2 to 3 times more likely to misuse drugs. They fall ill at a younger age and are more burdened by illnesses during life. They die at a younger age and they have more chronic diseases than women. Still, a UK-British medical journal study found that the general primary care consultation rate was 32% lower in men than in women. It is almost as if men are ashamed to seek help and be vulnerable, and it is literally killing them. The gender binary refers to the notion that gender comes in 2 distinct flavors, men and women, in which men are masculine and women are feminine. And more importantly, men are of the male sex while women are of the female sex. Much of the world around us is based upon this understanding of gender and sex, such as the clothing we wear, children's toys, and men's rooms versus women's rooms. In fact, one of the first things new parents learn about their future child is their sex. Maybe so they have enough time to choose between the color pink or blue for the nursery room. While the gender binary is certainly well anchored in our society and social norms, there is actually a long history of gender not being viewed in such a black and white manner. Indeed, many indigenous cultures among the globe held a more dynamic and fluid understanding of gender before encountering Western theories of gender. Even within Western culture, the characteristics associated with one gender or the other has changed stripes so many times. It is almost surprising how adamantly we argue that wigs, heels, makeup, and the color pink are for women and girls only, when all of these things previously were reserved boys and men. Why is it that important that we liberate ourselves from the gender binary? Research has found that suicidal ideation and suicide attempt rates among lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender people is significantly higher than among the general population. A study by the World Health Organization found that 41% of trans adults said they have attempted suicide. And the same study found that 61% of trans people who were victims of physical or verbal assault had attempted suicide. Lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender individuals who come from families that reject them or do not accept them are 8 times more likely to attempt suicide. And scientific research linked this directly to homophobic attitude and heterosexist discrimination. In 2016, Dr. Jordan Peterson, a professor in psychology at the University of Toronto, set off a cultural and political firestorm over his refusal to use gender-neutral pronouns. He meant it threatened his academic freedom and free speech. At the same time, the University of Toronto said it had received complaints of threats against the trans people on campus. When someone challenges the traditional gender expression, we tend to turn to fear, aversion, hatred, anger, violence, and discomfort felt or expressed towards individuals. I do believe that the least we can do for non-binary, agendered, and transgender individuals is to use their preferred gender pronouns, especially regarding the struggles and discrimination they will meet and have met in society. The consequences of not using the preferred gender pronouns could be fatal. Each time an LGBTQ person is a victim of verbal or physical harassment or abuse, they become 2.5 times more likely to hurt themselves, according to suicide statistics and facts. The gender binary is such a well-accepted concept within our society that we tend to get upset when we are unable to place someone or something inside one box or the other. Jean-Jacques Rousseau said that society exists outside of the individual. It is a mass of rules, relationships, injunctions, and customs that is itself the main obstacle of the realization of human potential, and hence, human happiness. I want to use my voice and privilege to achieve equality for everyone. And equal doesn't mean identical. Saying we are equal doesn't mean one is saying we have no differences. It simply means that those differences should not translate to different levels of opportunities and benefits in society. Thank you.